Greetings, fellow musicologists and metal scholars of the world. I'm Alex Tamulus. How are you today? I would like to share a tier list that I've never seen out there. Let me tell you that this tier list is not about the best Metallica album overall, not even about the best bass playing, none of that. This is a tier list if you want to hear loud bass. If I'm in the Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden bass volume mood, right, in a mix, which Metallica album should I listen to? Regardless of who's playing the bass, regardless of song quality, okay? This is a biased and subjective list according to my ears and to the headphones that I'm wearing. Let's begin with the debut album, 1983, Kill 'Em All. That album that gave us anesthesia. It's the eruption of metal bass. The fact that Cliff was able to tell his story through that musical piece is remarkable, but that's not the single reason why Kill 'Em All is a loud bass masterpiece. If you listen to it with headphones on, you can pretty much pick every single note Cliff's playing. That's my main prerequisite for what I consider a loud bass album. Can I learn the songs by ear? And with metal, that's very, very hard. However, you don't have that with Kill 'Em All. Listen to songs like Seek and Destroy or The Four Horsemen. It's a phenomenal experience that takes you back to the 80s, to the new album bass mixes. You know, they were loud and pleasant to bass heads. Okay, so now let's see which album will fall under the F tier, the total opposite. And that, my friends, is an obvious pick. That is the most famous bassless metal album of all time. Injustice for All. The bass is like minus 15 dB of what it should have been. I know that many people like to comment that they can hear the bass, and it's not about being able to hear one note or a bass sound here and there. It is about being able to follow the bass line. It's like Geddy Lee says, it's playing a lead down there. It's fun to do that, and it's even better to be able to hear it. And I'm not saying that a band like Metallica will have to follow this bass-heavy approach all the time, but Injustice for All is the total opposite of that, and therefore it goes to my F tier. There's one more S tier, but I will hold that thought for now. So let's look at Cliff's albums, other than Kill 'Em All. So Cliff played on Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. I'm going to place Ride the Lightning below Master of Puppets because to my ears it's harder to listen to Cliff on Ride the Lightning, and the volume is lower, his bass has more distortion. I don't know, songs like Cthulhu are very, very hard to hear the bass line, and most people don't even know that there's a bass solo there. So this shows me that the loudness is subpar. So Ride the Lightning goes to my D tier. The C tier will be an average grade, and we'll put Master of Puppets there. We obviously have Orion on Master of Puppets, and that's a metal bass masterpiece, but it should have been mixed louder. And you can hear my mix right here on the card. My mix is not really a mass market mix. I know that the bass is louder than everything else there. That was an obvious choice because it was an homage to, Cliff Burton. For mass market purposes, one can still mix a song with loud guitars, audible bass, high quality overall sounds, and provide a pleasant experience to the human ear. Alright, now off to the Jason albums. The Black Album will be somewhere around the B and the A tier. I'm gonna put it in the A category since that album cost $1 million and the bass sound is really sick. It's still not as good as Kill 'Em All in my opinion because Cliff is obviously one of my favorite bass players of all time, and also because I can hear the bass notes on Kill 'Em All a little bit more if I compare it to the Black Album, but that's not to say that Bob Rock did like a subpar job or anything. The bass is good. Alright, so what about Load and Reload? I think both have great bass mixes, but they will go to the B tier because Metallica has something about the statics of their sound, and they could have turned the bass fader a little bit up if they wanted, but they withheld it. So why Metallica? Why? Anyhow, if it was just a tad bit louder, filling the bass round with more frequencies, then it would get an A. Well, the finished Jason albums, we got the first S&M live album, and that has an acceptable bass volume, considering that there's tens of instruments on it and much less space in the frequency spectrum. But hey, the last Jason album I'd like to mention is actually my favorite bass-heavy Metallica album for bass notes. Garage Days, the 598 EP. This is, to me, Metallica really accepting, the bass, like let's say Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden, it's just awesome. At least we have one album with Jason that you can truly hear the bass notes. So this goes to my S tier. So what about Bob Rock? Many people forget that we have a fourth bass player, and that is Bob Rock, the famous Canadian producer. He played bass on Saint Anger, and I think that the bass volume is not too bad. The overall mix is subpar, so everything suffers. Saint Anger goes to my D tier. Most Metallica albums will fall under the D tier, since I subjectively treat the C tier as the average standard, and most Metallica bass mixes are below average in terms of loudness, okay? Now off to Rob's albums. Death Magnetic goes to my E tier. I really don't like the bass mix on it, even though it is the loudest album in terms of like clipping and compression and everything else. Still, the bass is not really in your face. It's just buried, and it's a pity, but it is what it is. Hardwired is a bit better, but they fall under similar issues, with loudness, and therefore I place Hardwired under the D tier. Could have been like D+, C minus. Some songs like Halo on Fire can fall under the C category, but overall the bass is not really too loud, especially if you have like average headphones, which don't boost the bass frequencies. You're not going to be able to pick out much by ear. And the same goes for Lulu. So now we have 4 albums under D. The S&M2 follows very similar parameters to Hardwired, so it goes to the D tier, making now 5 albums, and the overall standard of bass loudness with Metallica. And there you go, fellow metal scholars. 15 Metallica albums ranked according to bass loudness, to how much one can listen if one is listening to the bass notes, to the bass leads, to the bass lines, trying to learn the songs by ear. What about you? What is your loud bass tier list? Please share with me if you can, and remember that music is what music does, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.